Okay, so today when we deepen our relationship with ourselves, I'm like bracing myself because I think you're gonna like you're gonna lash back at me on this one. I don't know, maybe not. It's definitely outside of the regular parameters of what an adult would do. So that's why I think there's gonna be some lashback. And I'm not saying like it might sound like I'm crazy when I'm talking about it, and that's cool too. I'm totally unafraid to be crazy. Um, but what we're gonna do is create some little characters. It's like if you're a child and you're playing with little toys and you're, creating this character and this character, and maybe you think of it that way, or I don't know, maybe you think of it more as like I'm writing a book, okay? And these are the characters that are going to be in the book, okay? But we are going to use the characters that you already have at your disposal. Um, the different parts of you. The different parts of you. Write out some characters. Go as far into this as you're willing to. And do it for one day. Do it for the next month. And keep on with your other games and do this in the background, like however interesting you find it. But at the very least, do it this day. One day, let's write out the characters in your book, in you. Let's write out these characters that are in you. The 1-year-old version of you, the 2-year-old, 3-year-old. I mean, some of these might be too difficult because you're one and you don't know, but write out the ones that you do know. Pick some big milestones like 16 versus 7 versus adult, and write out those characters a little bit. And have them interact with each other. Do they like each other? Do they trust each other? How does the adult treat the 7-year-old? What is the adult's opinion of that 7-year-old? What's the adult's opinion of the 16-year-old? Is the adult totally ashamed of the 16-year-old? Or do they have a good relationship? Do they laugh with each other? Does the adult enjoy the 16-year-old's jokes? Does the adult enjoy the 16-year-old's jokes? Or does a 16-year-old think that the adult is lame? Whatever. Like, what is this like? What is the dynamic like? What would the story go like? Play it out as characters if you want to. I mean, if that's your style, or if you're like busy today and you can't get to this and you need to like make this a game with your kids, like, all right, look, I could like play Barbies with my 4-year-old, all right, do it, and let this be in that. Or whatever, let it be a writing exercise if that's the kind of thing you like journaling, or just play it out in your head. But what does the story go like? What are the different players and how many of them can you identify? Do you not have that many that you're kind of in touch with? Would you be able to name what your 1-year-old self is like? Isn't there a character who's one, who's feeling like I want to be picked up? Please, somebody just like hold me, isn't there? But do we, how out of touch or in touch are we with that? And yeah, play with it a little. I understand, who you were last year might be different or might not be different than who you are this year. You might think it's like frivolous, like, why do I need to come up with an adult character for all these different years of my life? There's not a difference. I mean, I've been the same person for the past 5 years. Is that true? That's informative. Or is that not true? Did you go through a really big year this past year? Have you switched a good bit? Is who you were last year actually a pretty different character than who you are this year? That's informative. That's interesting. And it's interesting to play out the relationship that the last year person has with this year. Sometimes when I've changed big like that, I almost shun the last year person because it's kind of like, too close to home, like, I'm not that person anymore, or and should I shun them, or does that put me in bad relationship with them? Is that going to come back to haunt me? And whatever, play it out, but play it out by writing it out like a story, playing it out like a game, thinking about it in your head, giving yourself a few major characters, and just see what that's like. Because the age thing helps. You might think like, oh, I have a dark side and I have a playful side, and that's fine. Sides of yourself work too. But if you think about it carefully, those sides might also be pretty easily associated with ages, right? I mean, is your dark side kind of more of your young self that like thinks everything's going to spin out really bad really fast, or your rebellious side that's more of your teenage side, so it can all fit, but play with it. There are different ways to think about this. There's even different schools of thought on this. There's something called IFS, which is internal family systems. And this is starting to be used in therapy, and you can look it up. There's some cool stuff there. But I mean, long before this was being talked about, this was sort of this concept in my mind. So it's always made sense to me, but I have definitely had some experiences where I've tried to explain this to other people, and they're just like, what are you talking about? It sounds like you're schizophrenic, like you've got multiple personalities in your head. And it's not as much about multiple personalities as it is about having different layers of you. And so the age thing works best to start talking about it. So I'm going to start with that. It's like you have the little young version of yourself, the 7-year-old version of yourself, and the 10-year-old version of yourself, and the 16-year-old version of yourself. And I mean, you've got all these years of life and all these phases that you've gone through, and you have these different versions of yourself inside still. They're still a part of you. They didn't go away just because you were no longer 17 anymore, just because you matured and you're an adult now. That's not gone. It's still in there. There are layers, like sedimentary layers in the earth. This is like stuff that you laid down. It was like groundwork that you laid down when you were 6, and then you laid another layer on when you were 7, and so they're all still in there as layers that participate in who you are today. And sometimes in a bad way. Your 7-year-old self might feel really panicked about something, or really frustrated, like they want to have a fit about something because they're worried about crap that happened to them when they were 7, or they're worried about that worldview that they had when they were 7. Like, oh my God, this is going to be the end of the world, because that's what and that still goes on in there. You have that. Now, how good are your adult versions of yourself at talking to that 7-year-old and smoothing things out? It may be like, it happens like this. It's not even something that you notice. You don't notice yourself feeling like you want to have a tantrum that much anymore, because you guys have a good relationship. And that's why they call it an internal family system, because you're treating all these internal parts of yourself like a family. Like everybody all loves each other, and they all live in the same house, and they all have to get along, and how much love and respect they have for each other, and how good communication they have between themselves are all key factors. Those are all the things that make the system work smoothly or give a lot of bumps. And to pretend like there would never be bumps is stupid. There's always going to be a time when the 7-year-old shows up and kind of wants to freak out. And then, the adults have to be like, all right, we hear you. Maybe we can adjust this way or that. Would this help? Or maybe they say something different, because maybe they say, listen, we hear you and I know, but we've got to do this. We're the adults. Trust us. We have to go. We have to go. We cannot stop to do that right now and to freak out. We have to go. And if the 7-year-old does trust those adults, the 7-year-old will probably go along willingly, because they already trust those adults and know that they've had a good relationship with them in the past. They don't get shut up and shut down by those adults. They get listened to. And so they know that they can really, trust those adults when those adults are like, shh, we cannot freak out right now. We got to do this. And the 7-year-old says, okay, all right, you must be serious. I trust you. I put myself in your capable hands. You've always treated me capably, whatever. And these are the types of things that can be, as you see, like, man, this can get really deep and really rich. And, that's why they're using it in therapy and stuff now, because, yeah, there can be a lot going on here where you've got to get these kids inside to be able to trust these adults, and why don't they? Or these adults in here to like listen to these kids and stop just telling them to shut up, because that's not working. That's going to create some like really misbehaved children, right? It does in real life when parents treat their kids that way. So it can get really deep, and play with it as deeply as you want. See how you like it. Like I said, I could talk forever on it, because it can get interesting in there, especially for a dork like me. But at least one day, play with it. See how it goes for you.